Okay, welcome everybody. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Abridged Code of Jewish Law, Chapter 96, and we are up to number 11. Number 11. Okay. So just to remind ourselves, we said that we make Havdalah. We first have the introductory. How are you? We first have the introductory verses. And then we have the introductory verses, and different communities have different verses. But amongst Ashkenazim is generally the Hine Keli Shawasi. We have a group of verses. Then the Havdalah proper. We starts with the Brei Priya Gofen, make a blessing on the wine. Then we make a blessing on the spices, then a blessing on the candle, and then there's the actual bracha of Havdalah itself. So that's how we're meant to do it. Number 11. If after you blessed, you made a blessing on the wine, and you now holding the spices in your hand, when there's kavan levarach aleihem, intending to make the brach on them, you're just about to. However, you made a mistake, slip of the tongue, and instead you said boirei maria eish, the bracha on the fire. Instead of brei b'nei mesamim, brach on the spices, said borei maria eish. So now what do? Any guesses without looking? No? No one wants to volunteer. Yeah, David, what do you think?
I guess nobody makes mistakes.
Oh.
I'm thinking that you go back to the proper order.
Okay, so you are partly right. I mean, it depends how quickly you pick it up. Right, so the Toikadei Dibur, if you remember, within the time it takes to speak. So takes to speak means to say the phrase, Shalom Alecha Rebbe. So I don't know, what is that? 2 seconds, 3 seconds? I didn't time it. But that's Toikadei Dibur. So if you remember like straight away like that, then Niskavas, you remember, the Sayim Oid Besamim. Then you just finish off Brei B'nei Besamim. So the person, he's got the spice in his hand, and he says Baruch Atah, etc. And he says Borei Mara Eish, Borei B'nei Besamim. Right? He corrected himself within the time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe, and then I'll get a question. And then also bracha besamim. And then even though there was this words that didn't belong in the middle, but this bracha counts. So he fixed it. As long as remembered within that short moment, it's just a slip of the tongue. We fix ourselves, and then it counts. And the mavarach achikach on there. Then after you've smelt the spices, then you make the bracha on the candle, and you keep going. So that's if you remember straight away. Yeah, David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, how come we don't say Shalom Aleichem, Rebbe? Shalom Aleichem is the normal greeting that one person does to another. So why is it Shalom Alecha?
Rebbe, why is that this? Well, I think that was probably because it's a drop shorter, and that's Toikadei Dibur. So if you, I mean, in other words, it's not that phrase per se that makes the time. That phrase fits in the time. So it's just a way to measure.
I get it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. Yes.
It might be because usually you talk to one person. If you talk to more than one person, you would say Aleichem.
So, although that's correct, but generally we say Shalom Aleichem even to one person. So it's not necessarily because it could be if you greet your Rebbe, you say Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. You know, you know, it's just that those words fill the time. So it's just a way of recognizing whether you said the time. You know, it's hard to measure 3.2 seconds or whatever happens to be. But if we know we have this little catchphrase, No, it's a few short words. So then, if you remember in that time frame, you correct yourself, no problems. It's like the mistake never happened. Avol, however, in this berchasa on there, if the person by mistake he intended to say the bracha on the candle. So, sorry, someone saying something? No, I'll just look, just a bit of feedback. I'll mute everybody. Unmute if you have a question. So now when the person made a mistake, so different mistake. Mistake is now not that he had a slip of the tongue. He actually meant to say the bracha on the candle, just the wrong order. So that was his mistake. So the first mistake was he had the spices, intended to say the blessing on the spices at the right time, slip of the tongue, he said the blessing on the candle instead. Here though, his mistake is he's intending to say the blessing on the candle when he should have said the blessing on the spices. So we say, also there, the bracha helps. In other words, the order, although ideally one should do the correct order, but after the fact, the order doesn't matter. It doesn't mess up the havdalah. So by mistake, he said the bracha on the candle, intending to say the bracha on the candle, then that's the bracha on the candle. And he waves his nails, whatever he does. And then afterwards, he makes a bracha on the spices, and he just does it out of order. Now, although it doesn't actually say it here, but I guess it's implied from the fact that only when he remembered Toich Kedei Dibur, in other words, in that small moment, that few seconds, he says, Shamalecha Rebbe, can he change the bracha? So although it doesn't say clearly, but the implication is, if remembered after that time frame, then he's ruined it. He's going to have to make that bracha again. Right? He's made a mistake in bracha. It'd be like, let's say, for an example, a person said hamotzi on an avocado. Right? So they right, the blessing on bread on something grows on a tree. Was a mistake. I don't know. He thought it was baked. Didn't know what it was. So he, if he remembers Toich Kedei Dibur, right, in that small amount of time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe, then he can just correct it. Change to Brei Prayer 8. And then he, it's like the mistaken words were never said. It's fixed right away. If he remembers after, takes longer than that period, then he's going to have to make another bracha, presuming he's still eating. Right? If he found that after he finished eating, we don't say just a bracha for no reason. But presuming that he didn't start eating yet, or he's still eating the same food, then he's going to say the correct blessing. So that's over here. Okay. All right. Number 12. Mitzvah laharbos katsas b'neos Motzei Shabbos. So we're finished with Havdalah, and we're speaking about Saturday night in general, Motzei Shabbos. So there's a mitzvah to have more neiros, more candles. Now today we don't usually use candles for light, right? It used to be, today we have electric lights. And usually if you, you put the light on, okay, some lights you can dim and make brighter, but usually if you have the lights on, there aren't additional lights to put on in the room. They're that, you flick the switch and all the lights go on. But once upon a time, when people would use candlelight, now people used to use the minimum possible. People avoided, it was expensive. And, it was, so people were early to bed, early to rise, and they used the minimum amount of candles possible. Of course, Shabbos, Yom Tov, we, in addition to whatever other lights one might have, we had the Shabbos candles, the Yom Tov candles. So similarly, ideally on Motzei Shabbos on a Saturday night, we should put extra candles. Okay, so the halakhically is just have something extra in the honor of escorting out Shabbos. Different people have different customs, how many they light. I don't think the amount is the issue. The idea is to have some extra candles, and to sing songs. Shabbos to accompany Shabbos out. Derech covered in an honorable way. The same way you would escort and have an honorable escort of a king or as a noble person when they visit a city. So you have this very important guest that comes into the city, and when they leave, you don't just say goodbye and let them walk out. There's a parade, there's something, there's so likewise Shabbos, the Shabbos Queen, and we accompany out the Shabbos in an honorable way, lights, singing, etc. Okay, now that's what we should do. Once we're doing it, yes. You're muted.
Muted, okay. I'm sorry, do you say that you're lighting Shabbat candles on Shabbat, or is it right after Shabbat?
So now we're talking about after Shabbos, but
Okay.
I was comparing it to before Shabbos. That's why I mentioned the.
Oh, are you lighting them before Shabbos?
No. So we light before, again, Friday night to put extra light in honor of the Shabbos. And
extra
then
candles on the side.
So that is something that's a much bigger mitzvah. It's a mitzvah you say a bracha on.
Yeah.
After Shabbos, it's not that it's a mitzvah like candles per se, but it's a mitzvah to escort the Shabbos out in an honorable way. And an appropriate way of doing that is lighting some candles.
Okay. In addition to your lights that you put on, you can also light candles.
Yeah. So generally we put some tea lights on the table. Then we have whatever lights you have in the room. Put a few tea lights on the table. It just gives I don't know if I'm sure if you measure it, there'll be some increase in light there somewhere. But it's just to give honor, farewell to the Shabbos Queen.
Right. Thank you.
No problems. So, and we sing Namaskir Eliyahu Novi. Now there's a customarily we should sing something. We should mention Eliyahu Novi, Elijah the prophet. Maspim Shiavoy, and we should daven that he's going to come. Vasalano Gula, and he's going to announce for us the messianic redemption. So we'll just go on a slight tangent. We'll finish this point. We'll go on a slight tangent to explain this. Generally speaking, we say Eliyahu is not going to come on a Friday. Actually, we'll go on the tangent first. All right. So we have a tradition that Elijah the prophet is going to come and announce that Mashiach is going to come. It's going to tell us in this time. Now, some skeptical people might say, God forbid Mashiach can't come today because we don't see on the news headlines that Eliyahu came. So the first answer to that is probably he did, but who paid any attention? Can you imagine someone came to your door and said, hello, I'm Elijah the prophet? What would your reaction be? Sure, and I'm Napoleon, right? That's no. So the regular people, that's tzaddikim who can perceive, we're talking about the people very few and far between that can perceive a person's soul on a certain level. they might truly recognize this Eliyahu Novi. But us regular folk who life trains us to be cynical, if we paid any attention, it'd be just to call the people who are going to come in the padded van and put them in a straitjacket and take them away to the padded cell, right? That's on a simple level. But deeper than that, without being, that might very well be what happens. Who knows? But more important than that, it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be someone coming and being on the headlines. What it means is somehow this soul of Eliyahu, who we're going to explain his situation a little bit in a minute, is going to come and bring a message to the world. So I'll give an example of me. Eliyahu Novi, he, so to speak, when he passed away, I want to simplify it by saying he went to heaven, like we tell children. But when the soul transfers from the being clothed in a body in the material world and changes its focus back to the true spiritual existence, his body did that as well. So what happens is regular people, or most people, the way it works, is our body, with this composite being, well, all people are composite being of a godly soul, literally a piece of God, and a physical body, right? The body is, to a certain extent, just an intelligent mammal, an intelligent mammal, right? And so we're a composite being, part godly and part animal. And it depends what happens next, right? Our goal, our purpose is for the spiritual part to rule and control and to be the dominant character, and to utilize the strengths of the animal part to be able to have a positive effect on the animal body itself and on the world and our surroundings. If, God forbid, the animal part becomes dominant, this is when we make our mistakes in life. But unfortunately, when the human allows himself to be run by the animal part of himself, there is no more horrible animal than the human, right? No other animal hunts for fun or kills its own kind the way that humans do. We let the animal run rampant. It's the most scary, horrible creature that can be. So our role is that the godly soul should be dominant, and that's how it is generally of people. But unfortunately, what happens is that even though the soul has had an effect on the body still remains a body, still remains a material entity, physical entity. And when the person passes away, what that really means is the part of the soul that's enclosed in the body, because the entire soul is not enclosed in the body, but the parts that are, that's the person's consciousness, it's the person's existence, their personality. When that leaves, that's what we call someone passing away. Many great tzaddikim have refined the body to the extent, and the animal part of them to the extent that it's not totally material, and therefore it doesn't decompose. Right? There's been many stories and witnesses of graves that have come open of tzaddikim over the years, and they saw the person, even though it was many years after their passing, the body was still intact. Probably one of the most best documented cases was the first Boston Rebbe. They so he passed away in the 40s? No, that's been later. Anyway, but he passed away. They brought him after the 6-day war. They brought his body to Israel. When I say afterwards, I don't mean the next week. I mean after things had settled down. And I'm going to say it was roughly 20 years. You know, I don't have the exact dates from his passing. And unfortunately, when they, I think it was the stopover, but or maybe it was when they already arrived in Israel, they dropped the casket and it came open, and you know, everyone's there. So you know, the people who are alive today that saw it, and it was like he just literally just passed away that moment. It was totally fresh. Then there's even a higher level. There's a person that transforms their material side to such spirituality that it turns into spirituality like their soul. Now, though Eliyahu Novi is the most famous, there's been others in history, and the Baal Shem Tov once commented that he was given this option, and he said there was a few reasons why he decided not to, and one of the reasons is he didn't want to leave his wife an aguna. His wife, you know, a lady that the husband's disappeared and she can't remarry, right? Because if his body would disappear, then there wouldn't be a body to say the husband died. So anyway, so that's what happened to Eliyahu Novi. That's point one. Point two, how does Eliyahu Novi keep getting into our lives? It's not just that his body went with his soul. It's a separate incident. In his lifetime, many Jewish people, unfortunately, were worshipping an idol called Baal. And Eliyahu was so frustrated at a certain point, he made a comment to Hashem along the lines of, you know, this is it. The Jewish people are over. There's no coming back. And I'm paraphrasing, but essentially Hashem said, you want to bet? Well, we'll see. We'll see. And because of this, Eliyahu Novi attends every single bris, every time a child is brought into the covenant of the Jewish people, and to witness, see, you're wrong. The Jewish people are continuing. And to every Pesach Seder. Of course, it helps being a spiritual entity that is above time and space to be at, you know, 50,000 Sidorim at the same moment. I personally will find that a little bit difficult, but a soul that doesn't have a body, well, at least not a physical body, can do that. And so Eliyahu Novi is the one who keeps sort of popping in and pops into history. And ultimately, the task is going to be to announce Mashiach's coming. Now, that may very well be in a physical way that you know, is going to be on all the news programs, plus television, the internet, right? Or it could be like he attends the Seder and the bris, where although he's present, most of us don't see him. Certain spiritual giants are able to see certain things. You know, we've given the parable before of wherever we are. I was going to say in this room, but we're all in different rooms, right? It's wherever room we're in, there's radio waves, right? But we're not hearing them. But if we take a radio and we tune into the right frequency, we're tuned in, now we can hear them. So the fact that we're not tuned in, the fact that we can't perceive them, does not mean they're not there. They are there. Just we're not tuned in. So certain spiritual giants are, so to speak, tuned in, and they can see and perceive. So you know, the fact that we didn't hear Eliyahu Novi coming doesn't mean that certain spiritual giants didn't get the message already. That's that point. So that's Elijah the prophet. He's part of our history, a part of all our celebrations. You know, several times I've been offered to drink Eliyahu's cup at the Seder. I said, "You kidding?" After what happened to me when I sat in his chair, I'm not touching his drink. But anyway, that's Right, so the child before the bris is put on the chair of Eliyahu, and anyway, that's him. He has also come in and out of history to help, lend a helping hand, because since his body went with him, so it can keep coming back. It can come in and out. As a side point, although it's quite most definitely true that Eliyahu Novi comes quite often, there may be times where people presume it was Eliyahu and not necessarily. But we'll leave that aside. So we say that Eliyahu is not going to come on a Friday. Why? He's not going to disturb everyone from preparing for Shabbos. Imagine Eliyahu is going to come and he's going to say, Mashiach's coming tomorrow or this afternoon. Right in the middle of this shiur, Zoom got taken over, and there's this flash, and it's Eliyahu Novi on the screen, and he says, everyone start packing. The airplanes are coming tomorrow. We're going to Israel with Mashiach. Okay, now, I don't know about you, but I would imagine it'd be a little bit hard to continue this year after that. It's probably a little bit hard to do whatever we're doing after that. So you can imagine you're trying to sweep the floor for Shabbos, and take out the garbage, and pull feathers out of the chicken that the butcher never did, whatever you happen to be doing. And all of a sudden you get this announcement that Mashiach's coming. That would spoil the preparation of the Shabbos. And then we'd end up having Shabbos, and that chicken would have feathers on it, or whatever, right? If we even manage to get it into the oven. So that's just, by the way, I guess a tangent on the tangent on the tangent. Often we find more feathers on the kosher chickens than other chickens. People may have noticed that. There's actually a very good reason. It's actually a very good reason. So the flicker machines. So it actually called it because they sort of hit the chicken and knocks the feathers off. In the non-Jewish places, they spray hot water on the chicken as part of the process. It's spraying, and that makes it a bit softer, and the feathers come out easier. In the kosher ones, if we put hot water before we salt the chicken to take the blood out, then that could partially cook the outside at least, or just the skin, and then the blood won't be able to be removed properly from that area. So therefore, it's done either with no water or a cold water. It doesn't quite have the same effect. So that's why you get those extra. So don't feel bad about it. It's a badge of honor. Now you know it truly is a kosher chicken. But kosher afterwards. Anyway. Okay, so that's number one. So Eliyahu is not going to disturb our Shabbos preparations. V'gam b'Shabbos ein mispal m'shavu. Also, on Shabbos we don't daven for Eliyahu to come. Why? Because we've got a problem. Well, it's actually a possible problem. So before we read it inside, those who remember, we learned about the tchum, that once we leave the city, we can't travel more than 2,000 amos outside the city. So we go outside the city has some open space if it's a walled city, that we're 72.5 amos, and then we count 2,000 amos, and that's as far as we can go. So unless we're living in Israel somewhere in a built-up area that maybe connects to Jerusalem, everyone else is going to have to go outside the tchum to get to Israel. Now, the question is, does the tchum apply in airspace? Right. So we actually learned, we ruled that in concept that if it's above 10 tefachim, right? So that's the tefach is the fist. Right. And again, I'm showing the measurement. We're not threatening anyone, God forbid. Right. It's I think I mentioned once before, I was giving a class once, and it was about the tefachim. and it was like a before school. It was an optional class, and literally every day for this 2 weeks during while we're learning these laws, one of the non-Jewish teachers came in just as I'm like holding my fist up to the class. You know, I don't know what you thought I was doing, but anyway, that's the so 10 tefachim, approximately 40 inches. Once it's above the ground, that's the outside the airspace of Rosh Hashanah, of a public domain. So there's a discussion as to whether does tchum apply in the airspace. So we actually learned in the Kitzur that it doesn't. So according to this view, if you could levitate, then you could go further than 2,000 amas. You just got to float and no problems. So you know, everyone start practicing that meditation and you'll get there. But the it's actually a matter of dispute in the Talmud. So we don't daven for Eliyahu to come. No, we're not going to complain. You know, if Mashiach's going to come on Shabbos, the same way he's going to work everything else out, same way he'll resurrect the dead, he'll take care of this problem too, right? But nevertheless, we don't daven. Given the Mesapkala, we have this doubt. Dilma yesh tchum l'mayim asara. Maybe the tchum does apply above 10 tefachim. When yachla over Shabbos, and then we won't be able to travel, or so we so Eliyahu, sorry, so Mashiach can't come to us, or Eliyahu can't come to us on Shabbos. So since Friday traditionally we have tradition is not coming. Shabbos we didn't daven for him to come. Well, came therefore Shabbos, as soon as Shabbos is finished, and now he's able to come again after this break. So therefore, we straight away daven that he should come and it should be good for us. So many people, you know, sing, you know, Eliyahu, Hanavi, whatever, at the Malka. We have, we ask Hashem to send Eliyahu Nob. But Oid, and there's another reason why we mentioned Eliyahu Nobi on Motzei Shabbos and Saturday night. Issa b'midrash. So we have a midrash that tells us as follows: the b'chol Motzei Shabbos Eliyahu nichnas the Gan Eden. Every Motzei Shabbos Eliyahu enters the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Yoshev tachas eitz chaim, and he sits under the tree of life. Now this is all a spiritual realm, so it's not a physical, you know, geographical location, but on a spiritual level, what that means to enter and to sit. The Kaisav is a chusam shel Yisrael mishamas Shabbos, and he writes down the merits of the Jewish people that they kept the Shabbos. So he's helping us out on Motzei Shabbos. He's recording our achievements. And therefore, when we mention him, we also mention him l'taiva. We say it's for the good. So that's Eliyahu Novi. Okay, any questions? All right, 13, Yud Gimel. Now, Misha Shaloi, someone who, if possible, Yikayim Sudas Malava Malka, he should fulfill the mitzvah of Malava Malka, of having a Suda to accompany out the queen. Excuse me, Malava Malka means accompanying the queen, so it's like this farewell to the Shabbos queen. The pass the Tavshil Chams, if they're able to, they should wash, have bread, and have a hot dish. Should be a proper meal. So when we say if you're able to, you know, it's that can mean financially. Person, you know, sometimes people after they've spent on the extra expenses of Shabbos, that's it. The resources are used up. Can also be when you're able to, you know, if it's summer, so you just had the third Shabbos meal, it's around supper time, so it's a little more substantial. Now Saturday night, you're not hungry. You know, in winter, third Shabbos meal is usually a bit earlier. People have a smaller meal, and then a few hours after Shabbos, people are hungry. But sometimes the person's not they're not hungry anymore.
So there isn't any.
So so we say if you're able to, means you have the resources and you have the stomach for it. We'll say. Personally, I've never had the problem of not being able to have another meal, but you know, some people, you know, so it works. And also, beside the shulchan yafa, you should set the table nicely. Covered Levi is Shabbos, and to give honor to the escorting out of Shabbos. Now, mi she'ev shelo lechel pas, someone who can't have bread. You know, again, they're very full, or they don't have, or you know, there's some people who bread doesn't agree with their system. You know, yachol lekol pachas minim mezainis or paydas. At the very minimum, person should have some type of cake or something. If you can't have that, they should have fruit. But no, someone should eat something. Should eat something in honor of Malav Malka. You know, in our house, when we often have leftover soup from Friday night, and so the soup's good. Just we have a very big pot, you know. So we often have some leftover soup, and sometimes when Shabbos finishes later, you're not hungry. You know, always heat up the soup. You know, it's you don't have to be that hungry to have a nice bowl of soup, and it's a hot dish, and so. But at least
Is
something.
is that after Suda Shlishi?
Yes, after Havdalah.
After Havdalah.
So after Shabbos is finished, we should eat something, a malava malka, it's called. Literally means escorting the queen. And it's the unofficial fourth Shabbos meal. So
The first breakfast.
well, let's say that. So they should have something, even if it's a piece of fruit, something. All right. Yudal, number 14. We just also mentioned that Malav Malka is also called the meal of King David, right? Because he used to make a really big one. He found out prophetically that he was going to pass away on a Shabbos, but prophetically he did not know which Shabbos. He was informed there was going to be a Shabbos, but he didn't know which Shabbos. So you can imagine, every time he survived the Shabbos, he was pretty excited. And so when he made Malav Malka, it was something special. So we also have a tradition. We have a bone called the luz. Now it's not clear. It's at the end of our spine, but it's not clear which end. So is it
The bottom hand.
Well, it's you know, it's not clear from the writings of the sages. It may be the bottom of the spine. I guess we'll call it tailbone or something. It could also be the base of the skull that connects the spine. It's one of the ends. It's just and different people are presumed different ends over the years, and you'll see in writings one or the other. But either way, we have this bone, and this bone does not decompose, at least the same way the rest of the body does. So, and this is the bone that when the resurrection of the dead and the body is reformed, it's rebuilt based on the luz, on this bone. And this bone gets its nourishment from the Malav Malka. So, if anyone needed another motivation to eat on Saturday night, there you go. All right.
I heard a terrible thing from a German guy I was working with. He said that in the camps they used to find the loose bone. It never burned.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
people,
if it never burned, but they did find in the ashes. They found these little bones from the base of the.
that's what he said.
Of the spine. Yeah. And there's photos of the. You know, unfortunately, Well, unfortunately, they were very methodological. They really documented everything, and
Yeah.
so that's unfortunate. They were like that, but I guess a fortunate thing afterwards is, with these records, people are able to find out yard sites. People are able to find out many things, and things like this. We see we're able to. It's not. I mean, we would believe it. We understand if it's Torah tradition, then it's true even without the photos. But seeing photos of these things, makes it easier. Yeah, David.
It's interesting that the Malava Malka is accompanying the queen, Shabbos queen, but at the beginning of number 12, it talks about accompanying the king.
Yeah, but it's a parable. The company king that it's like an honored person. But the queen, the queen is more of a Kabbalistic concept.
The
'Cause,
Shabbat is the queen, the Shem is a king.
Well, Shem could be also from many aspects. It's like a bride and a groom, and it's the weekdays and the Shabbos. Because on the one hand, Shabbos can only take what you put into it during the week. So it's like the weekday is the male, and the Shabbos is the female. But it also reverses.
In the prayer, we always say Hamelech.
Yes, yeah, but it's from that's our Melech.
Right.
So it's while the Shabbos being the queen is relative to the days of the week, also the Jewish people.
Yeah.
But there are certain Siddurim. It's not across the board, but in the special paragraph, this is the blessing of Shabbos in the Amidah on Shabbos. When we speak about Shabbos, we say v'yanuchu, like we rest in it. On Friday night, they say va, we rest in it, and always uses the feminine version. On Shabbos morning, say v'yanuchu voi, uses the masculine version. And at Shabbos mincha, they say v'yanuchu vam, which is plural. Right? And the idea is that when Shabbos begins, it's totally dependent on what we prepare during the week. So Shabbos is the female. Once we get to Shabbos morning, we're now getting the inspiration and the godly light and the energy force of Shabbos that we're taking to the, so it becomes the male, so to speak. So therefore it's void, it's the masculine version. And then by the end of Shabbos, it's the ultimate combination. So therefore we use a plural. If you look in, there's not many Yekka communities anymore, unfortunately. The German Jews, the Western European, they say B'nuchel Va the whole Shabbos. And it was actually a story of a fellow. He came to, before the wars, he was came to Eastern Europe, and he was a chazan, and they asked him to be the chazan, and he heard that in this part of the world they say v'yinuchu voi, the masculine. So Friday night he's davening, he says v'yinuchu voi, and they all scream out vo. So he thinks he must have got it wrong. So Shabbos morning Shachris, he says v'yinuchu vo, and everyone screams out voi, voi. So he thinks, oh, they must interchange. They swap. So at Musaf, he also says va. And again, they scream out void. So then he thinks to himself, it must be to say va at night and void during the day. So he comes to Mincha and he says, Minucha void, and they'll scream out vom. Right? So
they wouldn't think of asking, right?
Men don't ask directions. Just work it out himself. So that's that's what happened. I mean, I don't know if it's a real story or not, but that's one of the stories they tell. Okay. Number 14. Mi shehivdil kava. Someone they've made Havdalah already themselves. They're finished. Yachul lahavdil b'shul banov shegir chinuch lo hitzim yedei chavasam. you're allowed to make Havdalah again for children. In other words, a child does not have an obligation to keep mitzvahs of themselves. The child's obligation is actually the parent's obligation. Now, don't tell your kids this. Kids under bar mitzvah or grandkids, don't tell them this. But technically, they don't need to keep Shabbos. In other words, they're non-adult, they have no obligation. The mitzvah is on the parent to educate them, to teach them and get them in good habits. So it's the parent's mitzvah. So even though the child does not have this mitzvah themselves, so technically they don't need a Havdalah, the father is allowed to say Havdalah again, saying Hashem's name again and all the blessings to as for them. Mikol shekayim b'shul gadol. How much more so you can make Havdalah for another adult. Now, this is only if they can't make Havdalah themselves. But someone who does know how to make Havdalah themselves, better they should make Havdalah themselves than have someone who already made say for them. Okay. Someone who's making Havdalah for others. When he makes a blessing, he has to smell it. Even though he's saying the blessing for other people, he has to smell it. Why? In order that the blessing should not go for naught, shouldn't be for nothing. And some versions have brackets over here, and the brackets explain because there's a difference between the smelling of the spices and the actual bracha of Havdalah. The bracha of Havdalah is praising Hashem that he made a difference between the holiness of Shabbos or Yom Tov or whatever happens to be, and the weekday. So in concept, although we shouldn't say blessings for no reason, but in concept, even though I've said Havdalah myself, I fulfilled my obligation, the statement is true. And except for the fact we don't say brachas for no reason, I could say this 100 times, 1,000 times, because it's a true statement. Every time you say it, praising Hashem for making such a distinction. And that statement is true. So I could say it for someone else, even though I don't need it said myself. The only issue is saying Hashem's name without a reason, but the other person needs it said. So there's no problem. But the smelling of the spices is not a piece of Havdalah per se. It's just that since Shabbos ended, we're in a little bit of a downer, both spiritually and physically. So we smell something nice and, helps improve the mood. So it was for the benefit of the person. So to say that bracha, you have to smell it. Otherwise, then you said the blessing for nothing. We mentioned this as a side point before, that if it's women exclusively that didn't hear Havdalah, then a man should avoid saying Havdalah for them, because it's a question, since Havdalah is a time-bound mitzvah. In the Talmud, there's a bit of a debate. Is Havdalah connected to Kiddush? If it is, then there's no problem. Women have the same obligation as men, because women are equally obligated in Kiddush. So if it's connected, if it's the reverse of Kiddush, Kiddush is to bring in Shabbos and the Havdalah is to take out Shabbos, but it's part of the same mitzvah, then women are fully obligated. Therefore, they need to hear Havdalah. But if it's separate, then it's a positive mitzvah that's time bound, and except for certain exceptions, women are exempt from that mitzvah. Then they don't need to hear Havdalah. So since it's a question whether women are obligated in Havdalah or not, if it's a man who already fulfilled the obligation himself, so if he's doing for himself at the same time, no problem. Says Havdalah and has everyone in mind. But if he's already fulfilled his obligation, better one of the ladies should say it and avoid the situation. Okay. 15. The last one. And then we have, we should have put an announcement. We should have a l'chaim ready when we make our. You know what? Maybe we'll save the last line for next week. So save the last line for next week, and we'll.
Shir Amalus.
That's it. The truth is, we'll save the last. We'll save 15 for next week, and since we mentioned Eliyahu Novi, we'll have 2 Eliyahu Novi stories. Let's finish off. One, how sometimes, well, I guess they say if you have to explain the point of the story after you didn't tell the story properly, but I do want to have but you'll see there's a distinction. There was a fellow, he heard that if you stay up 1,000 nights learning Torah, you merit that Eliyahu Novi is going to come. So he stays up 1,000 nights. It's pretty hard. He's studying the whole time, and finally comes the last night, and he's so excited. And he goes every night. He's been studying in the shul. He goes into the shul, and it's a stormy night, and he's waiting. They're studying, so excited, and just then he hears a knock on the door. He opens the door, and who's there? There's a homeless man in the town, bit of a shikha, an alcoholic, and it's pouring down buckets. It's rain. It's freezing outside. And the fellow says, "Can I come in?" He thinks to himself, is he out of his mind? Eliyahu Novi's going to come in a minute. Well, I can't have this shikha, smelling up. Says, "I'm sorry, you can't come. You have to." Anyway, he kicks him out, and he's waiting the whole night, and Eliyahu Novi doesn't come. And he goes to a tzaddik afterwards, and he comes to complain. He feels he's been cheated. So he says, "Are you sure he didn't come?" He says, "I'm sure." He says, "Did anyone come?" So he said, "Yeah." He told him about this Zalman the Shikha, or whoever he was. So he says to him, "That was Eliyahu Novi. It was a test. Do you think Elijah the prophet was going to reveal himself to someone who wouldn't even let a homeless person out of the rain?" Story number 1. We're actually going to have 3. We've got extra time. Story number 2. There was, I wasn't planning to have the stories. So therefore, it was a very, very famous rabbi, so famous that I don't remember who it was. But in the second half of the 1600s, he was, there was this Tachvatat, there was these the Ukrainians, right, were murdering Jews. But so he was a widower. And he was staying at a certain place, and he was a great scholar. And he got up very early, or maybe midnight, whatever it was, to study. And the lady of the house would bring him a cup of tea or coffee, whatever it was, whatever they had. And she brought him this hot drink every morning. And one time she wasn't able to, and there was this orphan girl. Was an orphan who was a maid. And she comes, and she brings in the tea, and she says, "Oh, excuse me." And she comes back, she brings another one. She brings 2 cups. And straight afterwards, this great rabbi, he says to the master of the house, he says, "I need to have a meeting with you and that maidservant immediately." And everyone's, they think she's done something wrong. She offended this great scholar, who knows what's going to happen. So she comes in and she's all nervous. And he says, "Why did you bring 2 cups of tea?" She says, "Well, I thought it was manners. I saw you the elderly gentleman. You were starting with the elderly gentleman, and how could I bring you to not bring him? I thought it'd be rude. I'm sorry. So he straight away says, "Will you marry me?" So what was the story? It was Elionovi. Elijah the prophet used to come and study with him every day. No one else had ever been able to see him. They weren't worthy. And he had no idea who this orphan girl was or what merit she had. But if she could see Elionovi, that was the wife for him. But the last one that we'll leave with a thought. Actually, first time I've heard it many times since. The first time I heard it was from Rabbi Eli Smith, right? So another brother of Rabbi Menachem Smith, who runs this program, another brother-in-law of mine. Now there's this fellow came to a rabbi, and he says that he would like to see Elijah the prophet. What can he do to merit it? So he tells him, I'll tell you how. He says, at the edge of the town, there's this very poor family. It's a widow with orphans, and they have nothing. Go prepare a nice crate full of food. So milk, cereal, I know whatever they ate in those days, because they didn't really have cereal, meat for Shabbos. Go deliver it, and the merit of that, you'll get to see Elijah the prophet. So he prepares a beautiful hamper, and he puts it down, knocks on the door, runs away, hides behind the bushes, and he's waiting. No Elionovi. So he goes back to the rabbi and says, it didn't work. He says, try again next week. These things aren't instant. Fine. Next week, even a better package. And he goes and he delivers it, knocks on the door, runs away. And again, he's waiting. No Elionovi. Goes back to the rabbi, says, do it again. This week, the third week, as he's putting the package down before he knocks, he hears one of the little children say, Mummy, do you think Elionovi is going to come bring us food again like he did the last few weeks? Right. So he got the message, as incredible as it is when the real Elionovi comes, each one of us has the ability, so to speak, to be Elionovi-like as well. So next week will be our grand siyum completion on Hilchos Shabbos. You can prepare a little l'chaim if you like, especially those who started right at the beginning. And we'll have it'll be a slightly different format. I'm actually we'll be broadcasting from Israel, God willing. I've been doing a online course with it from Israel and education, teaching, and the grand finale. If I actually finish the last few assignments, I'll get a qualification. Yeah.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do after the siyum? What are we gonna learn?
I'm not sure.
Well,
not sure yet. There are a few things on the table. We'll see how we go. We might go to Hilchos Yom Tov and look at the differences. What's the same, what's the difference, or we might go total different
direction.
Rabbi,
make the final call. Yes,
do you have a minute for another story?
please.
Okay, so this Jew had read in a holy sefer, in a holy book, that if you don't speak the Vorim B'Teilim, like purposeless talk, for 40 days, you'll merit to see Eliyahu Navi. So he does this, and he's waiting, and he's waiting. He has 40 days. He doesn't speak any, nonsense talk, any wasteful talk, and he doesn't see Eliyahu Navi. You can't understand it. So he figures he's going to go to this great rabbi he's never seen before, this Rebbe, and he's going to ask him. So he's there, and he's about to ask him. He sees that this behavior is strange. This tzaddik, this Rebbe, is going over, and he's talking to his horses, and he's patting the horses down by their head and their neck. And he thinks, what kind of a rabbi is this that talks to his horses and pats down his horses? And so he says, Rabbi, I know I never met you before, but what kind of a Rebbe are you that you talk to your horses? And the Rabbi says, for your information, these horses have not spoken any Devarim B'Teilim, any nonsense talk for the last 40 days.
Very good.
See, he got the message that his service wasn't, it was similar to the horses, not so much to the person that was deserving to see Eliyahu Navi.
Amul is Menachal Safayet.
That's it. So we wish everyone a wonderful week, wonderful Shabbos. May we all actually deserve the revelation of Eliyahu Navi together with Mashiach, even before Shabbos.
Amen.
Stay
Have a great
safe.
Shabbos,
Thank you.
Rabbi. Thank you.
Rabbi, thank you.
Shabbos, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Stay
Take
safe,
care.
everybody.
Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.